Hello, and welcome to the Rock Metal Podcast. I'm your host, John Harris, and today on Rock Metal Podcast, we have Sacred Oath. They have a new album called Return of the Dragon, which released November 19th via Wormholedeath Records. Right now, I'm being joined by Rob to share some more information about this stellar release, where the dragon has been, how it returned, how is it doing these days, etc., etc. So, Rob, welcome to the show.
Good to be here, John. Thanks.
Absolutely great to have you on. And I feel so bad. I forgot to introduce my little lady here. This is Avila. She's going to be taking notes. She's our stenographer for today's meeting.
Okay.
Yeah. So Sacred Oath, Return of the Dragon. I also thought of Bruce Lee.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of strange that didn't even occur to us until after the album came out. And then it was like, oh yeah, Bruce Lee has a movie called that.
That he does. So it wasn't a matter of influence of Bruce Lee. That's okay.
Not at all.
Not at all, baby. Now, I guess the question is, what is this record about? Because in the case of Bruce Lee, it would be, I don't know if you want to call it like Chinese mythology or whatever, but dragons are obviously important figures, characters, animals, whatever. But then also dragons exist other places. So tell us about this Return of the Dragon. Is it a concept album?
Well, I don't know if I'd call it a concept album in as much as it doesn't really go through song by song, playing out a story. But the general gist of the whole album is addressing, the climate that we're in right now, figuratively and literally speaking. We've got a generation of young people right now that are, got a whole lot to contend with. And the dragon seemed as good of a mythical character as any to represent so many different aspects of that. Plus, the dragon's always been a sort of a token emblem for Sacred Oath.
Yeah. Dragons are effing cool, man.
Your stenographer is getting out of control there, John.
I know she is. She's excited. I know. I'm excited too. Dragons are cool. Sacred Oaths are cool.
He likes what I'm saying.
She does. She does, Rob. She does like what you're saying. If you weren't saying so many cool things, I mean, this probably happens a lot to you. Like you just, start talking and girls go crazy.
Well, no, mostly kids. I got 3 of my own. I spend plenty of time keeping them entertained.
Beautiful. Now, you mentioned it has some themes of what we'll call the current everything climate, because everything seems to be going on.
Yeah.
Is this then a pandemic album, like lyrically and all of that, or is it just happen to be one of those albums that just sort of randomly, it's coincidentally relevant?
No. Well, I wouldn't say it's not just all about the pandemic. I mean, there's a lot more than just the pandemic going on in our world right now. But we definitely wrote and produced the album during the first year of the pandemic, and most of the songs, I have to say, were influenced by a couple of books I was reading by author Yuval Harari. You know him?
I don't, neither personally nor have I heard of him. So tell me more. Who is this guy?
I've always been fascinated with human nature and culture, religion, society, civilization, just human behavior, and that's always been at the center of a lot of our lyrics. And these 2 books he wrote. Well, he's written many books, but the 2 that really made an impact on me were, the first one was Homo Sapiens, which was all about the evolution of man from, prehistory. Why did Homo sapiens? Why were they the species that came out on top? Because there were all kinds of different, subspecies, caveman, and followed that all the way through up to, modern day. And then I quickly went into his follow-up book, Homo Deus, which is really focused on what's coming and what are we looking at even in our lifetimes with artificial intelligence, and how's that going to impact us and our natures and all that. And I was just so into the book. And this is what is this, like our 9th or 10th studio album at this point? You just whatever you're hot on at the moment, you grab a pen, you start writing lyrics. So it seemed as good a topic as any for a Sacred Oath album.
Okay. Now you mentioned 9th or 10th studio album. What were you guys looking to do this time around? Anything different? Anything unique?
Oh, yeah. Well, since our very first record, I've been producing every studio album in my studio on my own. And so that can really put me in a position of, there's I have to really go out of my way to try and not get formulaic in so many ways. And that includes the sounds, the way that I'm recording things. It can be so easy to just keep going through the motions. This time, and I always try to change it up. This time, I really made an effort to really strip things down in all regards and do things differently. So drums were recorded entirely differently. There's more synth and keyboard tracks on this album. Although they're not playing any kind of a lead role, but we kind of added that into the sound. We got 3 guitar players on this record, with the addition of Damiano, who joined us really for the 12 Bells tour. And we figured, why not have him be on the studio album? So in so many ways, our objective was to do something new or fresh for us. And I like to think when I hear it that we were successful in a lot of those areas. So, I guess that remains to be seen.
Do you have any questions for Rob?
Yeah. So you see what I mean? Yeah. So she gets it.
Mm-hmm. She does. Yeah. You mentioned you recorded the drums differently than usual. Without, I guess, giving away too many secrets. What does that look like? Or what did that look like?
Well, first of all, typically I've really got a great live room in my studio. And the sound of the drums is really a huge part of the ambience of an album. And so it's a big part. So typically that's Kenny setting up. Not even setting up, because he almost always uses my house kit that I have here, which is a gigantic Pearl studio kit. This time around, it was a completely different approach. It was electronic drums combined with some real drums and real cymbals, and him recording to a click track for the first time in 35 years. So that was a big change for us, John. Huge change. And I thought Kenny did a fantastic job. I mean, we rehearsed it that way so that he'd be ready. It wasn't like, surprise, this is how we're doing the record.
Show up to the studio. What's this? It's a click. Do it now. What? Because that works.
Kenny is a solid, we're not kids anymore, John. So, Kenny's been around the block and he's a solid drummer. And by the time at this point in our careers, we have great communication and we're always prepared and we don't waste much time. So, yeah, he knew exactly what he was in for. And it actually turned out better than any of us anticipated. We were able to do so many cool things in the mix process, having recorded that way. I mean, there's so many neat things that I was able to do with his drums. It just gave us so much more separation, so that I was able to mix things in a way that you could really hear every little thing that was happening, not just in the drums, but in the guitars and the vocals and the bass, and have it still all be like right in your face,
I like the emphasis that you put on that, Rob.
Yeah.
I could feel it. The audience can feel it right now.
Yeah. I know. I do interviews like I'm singing a show.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah, I'm jumping in my room right now. I'm sweating.
Woo! Ow! Now, you mentioned some electronic drums, which, to be perfectly honest with you, that's kind of the wave of the future. You just plug in those bad boys and play away. Was it?
Well, that's the funny thing, John. I mean, it's not just the wave of the future. In truth, bands have been making albums this way, especially metal albums, since the 80s.
Oh yeah,
and we've just always had no interest in doing that, just because we enjoy the sound of an acoustic drum set, and this is the way we play live, so that's how we make records. But we felt like at this stage of the game, it was like, well, what the hell? Let's just do it to try something different. And it ended up being a lot of fun. And, if Kenny's having fun, I'm having fun. I mean, that's the way it always is in the studio. I really have no reason or interest in doing any of this unless I'm having a good time. So that, as long as everybody's on board and enjoying themselves and feeling creative and getting the results that they want, then it's a good thing.
I agree with you. Now, one of the other tracks that was featured and has a video, I have to double check if it's a lyric video or a video, or one of those fancy visualizer videos. But anyway, Empires Fall. What is this track about? I know you mentioned there's some things going on in the world. A few empires may or may not have fallen since, the whole thing started. I even have to ask, what's this track about? But let's chat about Empires Fall.
Well, you know what? Empires Fall is about a lot of things. But, everybody seems most interested in what I have to say about the visual imagery paired up with the direct lyrical references to, Rob Halford, Megadeth, Metallica, all that stuff. And, at first I was really hesitant to answer this question because I said, oh man, we're like in this cancel culture now. I got to be careful what I say. People are going to misconstrue me and people are going to, I'm not looking to start online, arguments and bashing. But, the truth of the matter is that there's a lot of people in my, I'm 52 years old and I hang out with 52-year-olds. And a lot of us are looking around and we're wondering, is the end of what we're into and what, we're attached to from our younger days in music, is the end of that in sight? I mean, you listen to a lot of the newer bands coming out today. Now, I'm not going to say that there's not a revival, because there are bands that are trying to revive classic and that classic metal sound. But are those days behind us now? And is the end kind of in sight? Will there be another Randy Rhoads or an Eddie Van Halen? I mean, all our favorite rock stars, every time I go on Facebook, another one has left the earth. And, you just don't hear bands putting out albums anymore, like at least bands that I listen to. They're not putting out their Number of the Beast anymore, or their Don't Break the Oaths, it's or their Ride the Lightnings, or their Operation Mindcrimes. And so it's just kind of like, I think everybody asks themselves that question at some point in their life. And I think with all that's going on in the world, and as we're all now, most of us in our late 40s and 50s, and some people even in their 60s, that were really caught up in that 80s metal thing, and we're all asking ourselves, like, wow, are those best great days behind us? And that's kind of what that's about.
Yes.
And a lot of
I'd hate to be that guy, but yeah.
Don't think I don't get emails, and posts from people who are like, tell me to screw off because I don't know what I'm talking about, and it's just as vibrant as it's ever been, and blah, blah, blah. And I get it. I'm not telling anybody that it's over, and I'm not telling anybody that what's out there now isn't great. All I'm saying is this is just, I'm just making an observation and letting people, listen. They either listen to it or they don't.
Yeah, it is a good conversation though. I mean, what do we want to call it? The fact that there was somebody like Ozzy who had a band whose sole mission was to bring people like a Randy Rhoads or a Zakk Wylde to attention. Well, he's not doing that anymore. And the only other person I know of who's doing that is Alice Cooper. But I mean, he's also, old. So, yeah. Yeah.
What happens, John, when these guys are gone? I mean, really, I spend a good part of my day teaching guitar, private guitar, keyboard, piano, bass, drums. I play all these instruments and I teach them all privately. I mean, that's really how I'm staying alive at this point in this pandemic. And it's like, you would be shocked at how many young people who want to play guitar come through the door and have never heard of Led Zeppelin. And I'm like, what? I'm like, I can remember thinking that this was our Led Zeppelin was our Mozart, like that it would be eternal. It would be infinite. And you've already got a generation of kids who don't even know who they are.
Yeah.
And what's in 100 years, what will have survived? Stairway to Heaven and Black Dog and Fool in the Rain? I mean, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I could be very wrong.
Yeah.
But I don't think that the way the industry and recorded music and music sales have gone or doing anything to like make any of that better. That's for sure.
Yeah.
It's really taken the value that we used to place in, in new releases. It's kind of taken the value out, at least for me. It seems that way.
Yeah. And what I'm about to say might be controversial. We'll get lots of comments maybe, but as a guitar player myself, when I think of these star players like Eddie Van Halen or Zakk Wylde, even Randy Rhoads, especially Jimmy Page, when I think of guitar virtuosos now, they don't have that bluesy slop. They're very proggy. Whereas an Eddie Van Halen, there was a bit of bluesy slop to him. He didn't play perfectly, but he played with a lot of heart and a lot of soul, and he did a lot of great things. But you could pick it apart technically, for sure. Zakk Wylde, again, a bluesy guy that just stands out up front, and even Dimebag. I mean, how many great guitar solos were just a couple of bends? You don't really get those out of Periphery.
Yeah, well, that's just not the style of the time anymore. I mean, yeah, I hear it's funny. I was listening to the radio this morning on the way, I don't know, somewhere to the bank or something, and they're playing new releases on that XM volume channel, and they played this band called Bring Me the Horizon.
Oh yeah, they huge. They win lots of awards.
Yeah, and I'm like, okay. where heavy music is now. It's like emo whining pop Drake sounding music that all of a sudden busts into a breakdown and a guy screaming in an absolute rage, and then it goes right back to that other thing, and I'm like, boy, I don't hear, and it all sounds like it was meticulously produced on a MacBook Pro laptop using Logic software and ironed out every last drop of human blood had been squeezed out of it. And I just thought to myself, oh yeah, that bluesy sound and that style of expression that you're talking about is just not present in today's heavy music at all.
Yeah. And it's
I get that the younger generation is trying to have their own sound. I get it. I totally get it. I'm not interested in it at all, and that's okay. I can't listen to Periphery. I mean, I spent the whole 90s playing in a prog band, and I was really into it, but it still was nothing like what I'm hearing now. I'm just not into it. It's not my sound, you know?
No. But speaking of your sound, for those who are still listening in, number one, you've beat the statistic, so that's great. The second thing is, if you go to today's show notes, you can check out sacredoath.net. The link will be there. You can stay in touch with the band. Also, there's going to be some videos available for Return of the Dragon, Empire's Fall, and then wherever it is that you consume music, Wormholedeath should be spreading the absolute dragon out of Return of the Dragon. November 19th via Wormholedeath will be available everywhere you consume music. We chatted about all kinds of stuff, and we finished up there with a great debate on the bluesy lead guitar player, which seems to be, we'll see if it makes a comeback. I'm curious, Rob. I'm curious myself if it makes, a comeback to just go up on stage and you're going to do E minor blues and you're going to bend the crap out of your guitar and for too long in the spotlight. And, everyone's going to love it and they're going to be great because you're not doing something, technically proficient on a line 6 helix. But hey, what do I know?
It sounds like you and I would have a good time having a long conversation.
I know about the beauty and simplicity of just an overdrive pedal into a JCM 800. But groovy. No, this has been good. Thank you so much for coming on to the Rock Metal Podcast today, Rob.
Hey, thanks for having me, John. And my best to your family.
Well, thank you. And to yours as well. Avila, do you have anything? No? Okay. Yeah.